The bulk of Parshas Dvarim is taken up with an account of how Klal Yisrael got from Mitzrayim to the edge of Eretz Yisrael. And Parshas Vayischanan begins with Moshe Rabbeinu on the edge of Eretz Yisrael, pleading with the Kadosh Baruch Hu to let him in. So, as Parshas Dvarim tells us the story, it highlights certain episodes. The Meraglim, for example, Milchemet Sichon Va'og, certain major points along the way that delayed us in our approach to Eretz Yisrael, that signified to us that we were on the brink, and we were HaKadosh Baruch Hu was giving us tremendous Siyata Deshmaya and Nisim in conquering the lands around Eretz Yisrael. And those are the episodes that we expect to find in Parshas Dvarim, that Moshe Rabbeinu will describe to us the journey from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael and the major points along that journey. What is therefore very surprising is a detour that Moshe Rabbeinu takes in his travelogue when he describes the process of appointing judges towards the end of the first Aliyah and continuing into the second Aliyah. Moshe Rabbeinu tells us that he tells Klal Yisrael, how can I bear alone the burden of leading you? We need judges, and I selected judges and explained to them how to judge, all the different rules, also the different rules of how to be a judge. And after Moshe Rabbeinu finishes telling Klal Yisrael about this process, that it was too much for him to bear Klal Yisrael on his own, and therefore he chose judges to go along with him, then he comes back to the story, okay, then we traveled, and we got the Kadesh Barnea and the Meraglim v'chulei. So right here, towards the beginning of Parshas Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu has already started telling us about the travels. He pauses to tell us about the process of choosing judges, some details about the qualifications of being a judge, and then back to the travels. And the question is, what is that doing here in Parshas Dvarim? It doesn't seem to be part of the story. So the Ramban comments, and we're going to try to understand what the Ramban is saying and the importance of what he's saying. The Ramban comments that Moshe Rabbeinu tells us about the judges because he wants to highlight to Klal Yisrael just how ready they were to go into Eretz Yisrael. Not only had they received the Torah, but they even had judges, shoftim and shotrim, to lead them, and they were all ready to settle in Eretz Yisrael, and that made the disaster of the Meraglim all that much worse. Right? The fact that the system was in place made the disaster all that much worse. These are the words of the Ramban, and perhaps there's also the Ramban also perhaps alludes to a taina on the leadership, that the disaster of the Meraglim, not only did it happen despite there being leadership, but maybe even happened because of leadership. Perhaps the leaders themselves did not take enough responsibility for directing Klal Yisrael in the right direction, and maybe that also is part of the Chet HaMeraglim. So in the Ramban we have, number one, that this parsha about Shoftim v'Shotrim is here because it describes to us, it demonstrates to us just how ready Klal Yisrael was. It highlights the magnitude of the disaster of the Meraglim. And number two, perhaps it also implicates those leaders themselves in not preventing the Chet HaMeraglim from happening in the first place, or from Klal Yisrael accepting the report of the Meraglim in the first place. This still leaves us a little bit wanting in the sense that there probably are other things that happened along the way that also demonstrated Klal Yisrael's readiness for entering Eretz Yisrael. For example, the Binyan HaMishkan, right? The Mishkan, certainly the fact that we have a Mishkan ready to go, that also demonstrates to us, I would imagine, that shows Klal Yisrael, look how close we were. We had even built them, we had written the Torah, we had built the Mishkan, and we were now standing on the precipice of Eretz Yisrael. And if you look in the Chumash, the parsha of appointing judges is about an aliyah and a half, maybe two, in Parshas Yisro. The process of building the Mishkan is a bunch of parshios. The entire second half of Sefer Shmos, most of Sefer Vayikra, detailing the laws of that Mishkan, that Mikdash, how exactly to relate to the Kedushas Hashchina of the Mikdash. And then you get the Sefer Bamidbar, and then in Sefer Bamidbar, Klal Yisrael is getting ready to enter Yisrael, and halfway through Bamidbar, you have the Meraglim. So in terms of the chronology, and in terms of the importance that the Torah places on significant events in the Midbar that were preparing us for entering Eretz Yisrael, I would have thought that building the Mishkan would be more prominent. So the Ramban is telling us that Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael, we started traveling from Har Sinai, and we even had judges, and then tells about the Chet Meraglim because the judges were an important piece in developing the framework for life in Eretz Yisrael. But why not say equally, maybe even greater, that building the Mishkan, right? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu stop and say, we traveled from Har Sinai, and we even had the Mishkan, and we even had the whole system of Kohanim and Hakravas Karbanos, and that whole system set up, and we were ready to go into Eretz Yisrael, right? And that would highlight the magnitude. And then you did Chet Meraglim, and we delayed our Knesset La'aretz, and the Beis HaMikdash wouldn't be built for another few hundred years. That would seem to magnify the Chet Meraglim in a much bigger way. So why Dafka focus on the judges? So I want to suggest, perhaps, that it's uniquely the process of choosing shoftim that demonstrates what Klal Yisrael was supposed to be doing in the Midbar and getting ready to do in Eretz Yisrael, and that Dafka was what they lost in the Chet Meraglim. What is that? What was the essence of the process of choosing judges? Moshe Rabbeinu in our parsha says it was too difficult to bear. Eicha esel levadi, the famous pasuk, Eicha esel levadi, tachachem ma'asem v'rivchem. You have the minhag to say that pasuk in the Eicha Trop. In Parshas Yisro, Moshe Rabbeinu uses a slightly different term when he's speaking to Yisro. And Yisro says, "What are you doing? Why are you sitting the whole day? And everybody is coming to you. This process is not going to last." Yisro said, "Navol tibol, you're going to lose strength. You're going to wear out. It's not going to work like that." And Moshe Rabbeinu says, "You know why people come to me? You know what role I serve for Klal Yisrael? Ki yavo elai ha'am lidrosh Elokim. People come to me because they're seeking God. Lidrosh Elokim is an incredible phrase. What does it mean, lidrosh? I'm first to debate. Does it mean to ask shailas? Does it mean to daven? Does it mean to clarify halachic questions? Does it mean to adjudicate in disputes?" Perhaps it encapsulates all of those things. Rav Hirsch writes, Lidrosh Elokim encapsulates the entire essence of what it means to be a Jew, to seek out God, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should define our everyday life. Moshe Rabbeinu was the medium by which Klal Yisrael looked to figure out how would HaKadosh Baruch Hu impact on their daily life. If they needed something, how would they go about asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Well, they'd go to Moshe Rabbeinu and ask him, help us to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If they had a shayla in Dinim Mamonis, something bein ish uvein achiv, then they would go to Moshe Rabbeinu and say, how does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want us to work this out? And if they had a shayla bein levein atzmo, how am I supposed to keep Shabbos? What are the rules of being mafresh shimus and maitzros? What are the rules of Tumah v'tara and bas b'chalav and the myriad halachos that we know of? All those Moshe Rabbeinu was explaining to people. This is how you seek out God. This is how you bring God into your life. And Yisro tells him, Moshe Rabbeinu, you are absolutely the master of Yedias Hashem in this generation. But the nation needs a much, much, much broader system. In order that Drishas Elokim will take place on a national level, it can't all funnel through you. We're going to need a system. And that's exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu did. He made a system of tens of thousands, close to 70,000 levels of shoftim and shotrim, maybe more. All those people enabling Klal Yisrael at every level to live lives of Drishas Elokim. That's Moshe Rabbeinu's tochacha. I would like to suggest. Moshe Rabbeinu says, we left Har Sinai. At Har Sinai, we were living lives directly at the mountain where we experienced HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, and it was clear to us that in this spot, we can be Doresh Elokim. And then we moved forward. We moved into a midbar, and the midbar is very difficult. But we had a system in place where at every single level, Sarei Alafim, Sarei Meos, Sarei Chemishim, Sarei Saros, we had leadership in place, not just leadership that can help people, figure out so they can not bump into each other on the road, and leadership to figure out who's going to be in charge of running the after-school camp next week. And we have leadership that's going to assist us, all of us nationally, to accomplish our great national goal of Drishas Elokim, of seeking out God, of living our lives with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the place where that's going to come to its apex is, of course, in Eretz Yisrael. Because in the Midbar, the Jewish Elokim was limited to mostly to theoretical halachic cases. People didn't have property. How many interpersonal cases could there really be? People did not have private homes. They didn't have kitchens. They weren't cooking food. They weren't going out to work. How much practical halacha, how much practical Jewish Elokim could there be in the Midbar? It was mostly theoretical. But in Eretz Yisrael, we're going to get to a place where we're going to live. We're going to live life in all of its facets. And in that place, Jewish Elokim is going to take place across the entire spectrum of our lives, personally, familially, communally, nationally. And that's where Jewish Elokim is going to come to its apex. But you ruined it. The Ched HaMeraglim ruined it. The Ched HaMeraglim, Klal Yisrael lost the opportunity to do so, and that's the great tochacha Moshe Rabbeinu gives. Moshe Rabbeinu says, we were traveling through the Midbar. We had it all in place. Like as Ramban says, everything was in place. We were ready to go into Israel. We even had the Ma'arechas HaMishpat. We even had leadership. But as we're saying, it's not just, you have leadership, and that's another important Tanai. That is the critical Tanai. Leadership that infuses the nation with religious awareness, that allows the nation to live a personal and national life of Jewish Elokim. We had all of that in place. And then the Ched HaMeraglim came and ruined it. And that's the great Tochacha. We are still living under the shadow of Ched HaMeraglim. Mir Hashem, this week, we are trying, this week, and on Tisha B'Av, we're trying to work on ourselves personally, nationally, to try to rise up from that chet, to get back to the place of being Dorish Elokim, personally and nationally. Mir Hashem, we should see Yeshua's Bekarov.